Hello, and welcome to the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association podcast, Back to Basics. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Resch, president of the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for another enlightening episode. In each episode, we will be bringing some of the brightest minds, visionaries, and experts from various fields of healthcare, business, politics, and of course, chiropractic. We'll engage in a thought-provoking conversation with today's guest to provide you, our listeners, with an opportunity to gain valuable knowledge and wisdom that can positively impact your life. Today I'll be speaking with Dr. Wendy Varish, chiropractor from Howard's Grove, Wisconsin. Dr. Wendy graduated Salutatorian and Summa Cum Laude from National College of Chiropractic. She is extremely educated. She has her certifications in sports chiropractic, occupational health, and pediatrics, and has achieved diplomat status in orthopedics. Her statewide leadership roles include board member, committee chair member, and past president for the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association, and also the past president of the Wisconsin Back Society. Dr. Wendy goes above and beyond as an instructor for the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association, consistently receiving rave reviews from her students. Dr. Varish was also honored by her peers as the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association Chiropractor of the Year in 2021. On a local level, Dr. Wendy has been a longtime volunteer and board member of the Howard's Grove Advancement Association and a charter member and secretary of the Howard's Grove Education Foundation. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Wendy Varish. Dr. Wendy Varish, how are you today?
I am excellent, Chris. Very excited to be talking to you tonight.
All right. Like with everyone else, I'm going to go straight Wendy if you're good with that.
I am perfect with that. You know me.
Right. We've got a lot to cover because you have a fantastic chiropractic career to tell us a little bit about. Might even dig a little bit into your life outside of chiropractic as well, if that's okay.
You're making me sound old now. Thanks.
You're not old.
Thank you. Good.
All right. I'm going to get right down to how did this all get started? What inspired you to become a chiropractor?
Wow. That's a fascinating story, actually. And there's some days I think about it more often than I realize, especially when I'm meeting young kids, whether they're patients or whether they're aspiring chiropractors. So first of all, growing up, I grew up in a town, very small town. We did not have any chiropractors. I didn't even know what the word was. You know, I probably would have been one of those that pronounced it chiropractor, you know, how you oftentimes will have your patients say that. But at the same point, I was very motivated. I actually went to UW Wisconsin Madison, so I'll go Badgers. And I started the pre-med route. I was actually going to go into genetics. And so I was actually in the pre-med program at the time. And I worked at the UW hospitals. And this was way back. Oh man, I'm going to date myself now, Chris. This was way back when they only had a few modules in the big hospital systems there. And also our ECGs would be faxed to us. We would take that fax. We would travel up the elevator to cardiology, find the cardiologist that was on staff to read the ECGs, which, by the way, we got pretty good at reading them as well. But if it was a stat one, we had to have it done within a few minutes, 15 minutes, I think. Come back down, and you'll never believe this. We had to type it on a typewriter and then fax it back to the surrounding hospitals. So working there and then going to school too, full time, of course, one defining moment. Well, let me back up just slightly. Again, I did not know what chiropractic was, but my one of my I think it was my senior year going into college. During the summer, my parents had moved to a different town, and my mom had come to know this chiropractor. And at the time, I was having knee problems, and so she said, "Hey, why don't you go to this chiropractor?" I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I went to her and she did an exam and for my knees, of course, but she examined everything. And then she asked me, "Well, do you have headaches?" And I said, "Well, I have headaches, but you can't help me with those," because I had been tested for everything from allergies to tumors to everything else. And I was told that they were in my head, quite appropriately, right? It just so happened that I had started with headaches about 2 years prior to that. And, you know, they were just all the time. And you know me, I'm a very type A, outgoing type personality. And after being told that there was nothing wrong with me, I just started to lie about them, right? I just didn't want anybody to worry about me. I was the oldest of 5 girls, didn't want my parents worrying or whatever. So I just kind of started living with these headaches. So they were pretty natural and normal to me, right? So when she asked me if I had headaches, I just thought she was a goofball and whatever. And she showed me my x-rays of my neck, which apparently was completely backwards. And of course, I had a hyperkyphosis of the cervical spine, asked me when I had been in an accident. And when somebody asks you, what accident were you in? My first thought was, I've never been in a car accident and couldn't think of anything. Anyway, after about 3 adjustments, all of a sudden, I realized I did not have a headache. And it was this crazy, open, exciting feeling. And it was just amazing, right? So I learned a lot from her that summer. I actually went to several seminars with her and I was fascinated by chiropractic. Didn't know a whole lot. I did also shadow somebody who happened to be a DO at the time. So it was interesting, but I was still going to Madison at the time. So my career path at this time, chiropractic was not at all my career path. I just thought it was fascinating. So fast forward, working at the UW hospitals, one of the grand rounds was chiropractic. Is it all it's cracked up to be? And some of the staff cardiologists knew that. I don't know why they knew I was interested in it, but they said, hey, why don't you come to this one? So I went to it thinking, oh, this is going to be really cool and really fun. And the crazy part was, it was absolutely horrible. The chiropractor who gave the grand rounds was so anti-chiropractic that I just sat there stunned. I remember sitting in this conference room, just totally stunned on how negative he was.
So this was a chiropractor giving a presentation called Chiropractic Isn't All What It's Cracked Up to Be?
Is it all that it's cracked up to be?
Is it all that it's
Is it all that it's cracked up to be?
And it was given by a chiropractor that was anti-chiropractic?
Yes, and I would give the name because I still to
No,
this day
that's
know the
okay.
name. And
That's okay.
and the crazy part is, anybody who does or who has had the joy of having an independent medical exam probably knows this person too. So this was way back before I ever knew who this person was, but it was such a negative. Oh, they're gonna, the chiropractor should never be touching patients. They don't know what they're doing, anything else. I'm gonna guess it was 1988. I'm guessing. I'm thinking it was 1988-ish. And so at the time, not knowing anything about Wilk versus any ACA or anything, I knew nothing other than this guy is wrong, because I had personal experience that this changed my life. And working in the hospital situation, the other thing I had realized was that nobody cared at the time about the person, about the patient. It was always a medication. It was always a number. And this, again, was way back in the late 80s. And it just frustrated the heck out of me. So I actually went up to this doctor or chiropractor. I don't even want to call him a doctor afterwards. And I went up with another person. There was another young person there who I didn't know who he was at the time. And we were both talking to this guy, and why are you saying this? And he's like, oh, well, when you guys grow up and actually, get in the real world, you'll understand all this. And I mean, I must have been very forward back then too. I was just like dumbfounded, and I was just very frustrated, and turned to this other guy. And when this other doctor left, we both looked at each other. We're like, wow, this just totally blew my mind. And here he just gave this presentation to all these MDs, and we're sitting there, total students, pre-med probably students, going, okay, we don't agree with this, but who are we to talk? Anyway, his name happened to be Eric Gonstead. And all I knew about Gonstead was, oh, I had heard about the Gonstead Clinic, and there was something famous. Ended up, he was the nephew. And I've seen him off and on throughout the years, but I will never forget his name because of that. But
So he was the
anyway,
other student attending the conference.
Yes, yes. Okay. He was the other student. So anyway, we it wasn't long after that. I was called got called to the principal's office. I was I was called up to one of the doc's offices, and he one of the cardiologists, and I won't go into his name either. But anyway, he sat me down and he's like, you know, I heard you were causing some trouble after the grand rounds. What is this chiropractic stuff all about? And then I started talking to him. And remember, I had no intentions on going into chiropractic at this time. And he said, well, you just need to relax. You've got all this going on. You'll have no issues in med school. You just need to back off. And I said, well, you know what? I think I'm going into chiropractic. That night, I went home, filled out the application, decided to go into chiropractic,
That
and
is
never
awesome.
looked back. Other than when I was paying my student loans, then I looked back. But
Yeah.
no, I didn't because it was all good. It was all good.
And those student loans aren't what they are today, are they?
Oh, well, actually, okay, because they were huge for me at the time.
Hmm.
Yes, and then also my George, my husband, um, we met in chiropractic school, and his were even larger. So we met with a couple of nice house payments. I mean, we graduated
Wow.
with at the time, I think mine were like 80 or 90, and his was over 100. So it was high back then, but you just put your nose to the grindstone. We didn't make any. We had a bill to pay. We received the education. We did our jobs, and we paid them off early. And I've always been really proud about of that because we did not make excuses. It was just a bill, needed to pay it. And like I said, we received the education, so why shouldn't we pay it? It was very eye-opening at the time, of course. But
So just to briefly go back to the University of Wisconsin, I will let you know, and you'll be happy to hear this, that they no longer have that person give the lecture anymore because they asked me to do it.
oh, I'm so
And
excited. That is crazy
so I'll be
cool.
happy to tell you, I would go down to Wisconsin and I would meet with the students that were in the nursing school, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and athletic training, and
Excellent.
explain to them about multidisciplinary care, including chiropractic. So,
Oh,
and
Chris,
I
this
was very pro chiropractic.
that
So then
works
COVID
right.
happened, and I haven't been back since. So
Oh, you've got to get back. You have to get back.
I hope
That's
to because I really enjoyed it.
yeah.
Moving on to chiropractic college.
Hmm.
Walk me through that now.
Well, okay, so I went into chiropractic college. First of all, at first, because my first classes, of course, were anatomy, and I'd already had anatomy. So I thought this was going to be a piece of cake. However, the anatomy we received at chiropractic school blew away the anatomy that I received at Madison at the time. We had our anatomy had, of course, the lecture. And at the time, we only had 4 to 6 people per body that we kept for the entire year. We had a fabulous, fabulous education with that. And I'm a geek, so I love to learn. And, we were in class, what you remember, 25, 30 hours in those semesters. And it was great. Absolutely loved it. I chose national because coming from a very medical background at the time, they fascinated me because they had an MRI at the time. They did a lot of research. So that's kind of where my background was. But ironically, I am probably one of the most pro chiropractic, whether it be philosophy or whatever you want to say, than anybody else. And I've found that over the years. The associates that I've had, some of my best friends in chiropractic, honestly, I don't know if I can tell just by talking to them what college they went to. It doesn't matter. I've always said this. It's the person. Okay. It's the person. Whether they go to Life or whether they've gone to Palmer or National or whatever. I, they always say national grads can't adjust. I would argue that because you just learn. And I think it's the person. And so I think I don't, when I look at somebody as far as another chiropractor, it does not bother me what school they went to because I know that if they are passionate about it and they continue to learn and they understand that they may, it's the motto, one of the mottos I live by is you don't know what you don't know. So as long as you're willing to learn and keep your mind open and be in practice every day, as opposed to I'm at work, I'm practicing every day. I'm learning something new. And that's what I think is fascinating about us as a profession.
Yeah, I would agree. We have at my office, we have Palmer, we have National, we have Northwestern, and you are correct. You do not know which school they went to based on their adjustment. So,
Right.
but I will tell you though, back in the late 80s and into the 90s, National and their diagnostic department with Dr. Skogsberg and company, pretty darn good school.
Yes, absolutely. It was fun.
Yeah, they had that diplomat program that was stellar. So,
And actually, that's where I did my diplomat for orthopedics. It was through National.
gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So then time to go join the world of chiropractic practice. How did that start?
Okay, well, as I said, I met what became my future husband, obviously in chiropractic school, which was funny because I always swore I would never date somebody in the same profession, let alone get married. So my first lesson in chiropractic was don't swear, um, in that sense. But anyway, I for whatever reason, I always knew I wanted to come back up to Wisconsin. Always. Um, I was born and raised in Illinois, but my mom was from Wisconsin. I just always had a calling for Wisconsin. So it was kind of a, fate or whatever when George was from Wisconsin as well. And so when he came up here, he found a clinic group and was working for them as an associate in his own office, and it worked out well. And 2 years later, when I graduated, I had the option on what I wanted to do, but it actually worked out perfect because I was able to come up to a very small town. And I grew up in a town smaller than Howard's Grove, so it was awesome. And yet I am an hour away from Fox Valley, Green Bay, Milwaukee. So I'm a small town at heart, but I love the big cities. So it actually worked out absolutely wonderful.
Side question here, Wendy. Bears or Packers?
Okay, so when we first got married, it was a very mixed marriage. And I would oftentimes have little bear effigies burning on the chiropractic lawn. There was one time there was this, because of course people are very passionate here. However, to this day, I remember exactly when I would always root for the Packers unless they were playing the Bears, right? Well, I remember the day when they let Butler go, for all of those of you who remember, because I was an 86 Bears fan, right? And when they let Kevin Butler go as their kicker, I said, "That's it, I'm done." And so since then, I've definitely been a Packers fan.
Nice. Okay, now that we've got that established, back to Howard's Grove in your practice.
Yes, no more bear effigies burning on the lawn, so I'm good. Okay, so back to the practice. I started out as an associate in my own clinic. It was there was nobody when I first started. Became really high volume, but not in the way I wanted to practice. We're very, very busy. Don't get me wrong. In fact, probably too busy some days, but I don't like 2 minutes to 3 minutes per patient. I cannot give good care in that amount of time. And so it kind of frustrated me. And so I decided that I was going to go off on my own and had a non-compete and was all set and ready to do that as far as waiting. And then what they did is they offered for us to buy out our offices, which, okay, sounds good, except they made us both buy out both at once, which was a bit of a struggle. It was a very big struggle at the time because here we are, young in practice. This was a year and a half after I started, going from starting a practice, building it up, and now, and student loans, of course, and now we either buy both practices or we don't buy either. And it was a big decision. I think we went to 5 different banks before any of them would realize that having super high accounts receivable was not necessarily a good thing. Explaining that to them as opposed to services and, writing up business plans and everything else. And finally, the small town bank in our well, now I call it hometown here, said they were going to take a risk on us. And they did. And it has been wonderful. It's been a great working relationship. So that's how we ended up owning Varish chiropractic clinics, the 2 of them.
Let me get that straight. You both went and took a job and
Yes.
you were set up in separate offices to start practices.
Yep.
Remotely in two different towns. You were in Howard's Grove. Okay, George was in Sheboygan. And then you had a decision to make, and you decided to go to the bank, borrowed some money, and both bought those same practices. And
Correct.
there's Varish Chiropractic.
Correct.
And then today,
Well, today, happily, we sold the Sheboygan office January of 2019. George continued to work there for another year and 9 months. He came over to, I'll say my office, but if he hears this, he'll say, what? It's our office. He came over to Howard's Grove October 1st of 2020. If you ask him, he'll be honest with you. He has a hard schedule. He works one day in a row, twice a week. So he works Tuesdays and Thursdays, where somehow I ended up working daily, but that's okay. I love being with patients. I love doing what I do.
He got a 2-year head start on you, didn't he?
Right. So really we should be like even now.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Yeah. No, but that's okay. It's all good. I don't think I wouldn't mind, cutting back a little, I guess. I'm kind of at that point. And I'm sure you understand this too. It's not the patients. The patients, my staff, I absolutely love. It's all the other business stuff. It's the business stuff that can become a challenge because there's a huge dichotomy there. As chiropractors, as doctors, but especially chiropractors, we are innately compassionate. We have that sympathetic, empathetic type of personalities, right? And it is sometimes very difficult to balance that with the business end. And when you are a business owner, I always say I am the worst business owner. I am not cutthroat. I hate confrontation. Running a business as a chiropractor, I think is a very challenging, it's very challenging. And I don't know, what do you think about that, Chris?
Well, I think it's difficult to have the heart of a healthcare provider and the
Yeah,
mind of a business owner. Sometimes those are competing, your mind and your heart, and you
very
have to
much.
make some very difficult business decisions because at the end of the day, you're in business, but
Mhm.
you're in business as being a healthcare provider. So I guess, can you give an example of maybe some adversity that you've faced and how you've handled it and how you fixed it?
Yes. In fact, I can also maybe explain how I've grown in the business aspect. Um, well, first of all, as growing up, like I said, I am the oldest of 5 girls, so my dad deserves a lot of sympathy there. But growing up, my dad worked for a Caterpillar tractor company, and with their union and everything, we always were in an HMO for insurance. What that meant was that if insurance didn't cover it, we were of the mindset that A, it wasn't worth it, and B, we couldn't go. So going into chiropractic, right away, there was, whether you're in the PPO or not, you would come across patients who, oh, their insurance wouldn't cover, or maybe they ran out of insurance or whatever the case was. And it took a while for me to start to realize my worth in the sense of, oh, well, obviously chiropractic must not be worth it. I know that sounds weird, but I think it was just one of those things that was ingrained in me. And it took a while for me to understand that, wait a minute, no, if I do my job and I do it with integrity, the patients will be there. They will want to be there, whether they have insurance coverage or not. And I think in the beginning, I probably gave away way too much. Now, I would argue that I was doing it out of kindness and out of compassion. And I mean, 100% giving stuff away, giving away your time. Because, hey, you're just using your hands, right? Not
Mhm, mhm.
realizing that
It's
there's
not costing you
so,
anything.
oh my gosh, right? Yeah, except for that $100,000 in loans we graduated with.
Right.
Um, and allowing those people to, take advantage of that. As I grew and started to realize that, wait a minute, those same people then would be the people who did not value. Anybody we started giving stuff to would be the patients who they'd missed their appointment, well, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? Well, you could do this, right? Well, and they started, it kind of, it, it took a while for me to realize that, wait a minute, that was lowering my value. And I think a lot of chiropractors have self-esteem issues. I can tell you I did huge self-esteem issues. I think either they have too big of an ego for themselves, right? Or they don't have enough of one. And I was definitely in the category of, oh, I'm not worth it. It's just my hands. It's just my time, not realizing how valuable that really was. And it took a couple of people that I got burned on. Oh, here's a good one. I remember I had a patient that I had not seen for a while, and I gave her so much free care because she was in and out of jobs and this and that, whatever. Well, anyway, she came back because, oh, she had gone somewhere else and she just didn't like the adjustment. So she came back, and I was like, oh, what do you mean you went somewhere else? Oh, well, yeah, I went here because it was so and so told me to come. And oh, they used hot packs and I loved it. And I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. It didn't matter how much it cost. It was awesome. And I'm like, okay. And here I just gave you all this. And I realized that she did not value what I did until later, when the adjustment wasn't as good, right? But she was willing to pay for all this other stuff for somebody else because they charged her. And it was kind of a eye-opening experience. And then, from a personal standpoint, I realized that I didn't want to go somewhere and not get something free, because I felt like I was taking advantage of that provider, whether it was a dentist or whatever. And it took a long time for me to realize that you cannot give everything away. Now, that's not to say they're not financial hardships, but if somebody's in a true financial hardship, please give them the care that they need. Give them all the prayers that they need. Give them what they need to help them get back on their own. But if it's a true financial hardship, they will also be doing everything they can to somehow pay you back or to get out of that hardship. It's the people who start to take advantage of you that start to really wear on you and start to cause burnout, because you get too busy. And I don't want to say making money, but you're not making money. You're getting frustrated because the people they're not valuing what you do.
You made a lot of really good points there. The whole self-esteem, confidence, yeah, that can be because you have an inflated ego, or it could be a confidence issue and giving things away because if I give this to them, then they're more likely to come back and see me or tell other people about the great care that I provided for them. And it can be a bit of a myth. And it can be a
Yeah.
very nice gesture when it's done right. And like you said, in the financial hardship. But let's talk a little bit about that self-esteem. So how did you gain it?
How did I gain business self-esteem or in chiropractic?
Either one.
Yeah. So business self-esteem, there was a couple of things that helped me gain that confidence. First of all, was realizing that the people who were missing, the people who were taking advantage of, the people who were not respecting our time as well as what we did, were the ones that we were giving the most to continuously. I had one patient come in. I will never forget. She was in dire straits, had just lost her job. This was back before jobs were all over the place. Needed care significantly. And I said, okay, we need to do this and this. Well, I can't pay that. I'm like, I get it. So don't worry, I'm going to give this to you. She's like, no, you don't understand. I've got to pay you somehow. Otherwise, I cannot take advantage of you. And I'm thinking, I'm giving you this. What do you mean take advantage of me? And she refused to come in for treatment unless I charged her something. And I thought that was very odd. However, so we did. We made a plan. We charged her. She would bring in flowers because she had time to do them at her home, stuff like that. And as soon as she got a job, she was paying back. And she is, to this day, one of our best patients. And I had asked her, a couple of years later, when you couldn't pay it, why were you so insistent on making sure you paid something? And she said, because you are saving my life. If it wasn't for you, I would not have been able to go back to work and to do my flowers and to do all of this. And if you don't understand what that's worth, you need a wake up call. And I was like,
Right. That's
oh,
good.
yes. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. And so that was one of the cases. And then as far as self-esteem with chiropractic, personally, like I said, and you probably know this, I am a total geek. I love learning. I always want to make sure that I am constantly on the ball and making sure the diagnosis is right. Is there anything new out there? And I don't mean gimmicky, but what is going to help the patient? What's going to help me the best as far as helping them? But as far as chiropractic, because remember, I came from a medical standpoint, and then all of a sudden people are telling me that chiropractors are no good, or, we are not medical. They're real doctors, which of course I hate that term. But I was one other defining moment was I was actually president, I believe, when I had to introduce Scott Walker at one of the state conventions. And our executive director at the time had forwarded me this script that I had to use. I had to use during my introduction. And, I was pretty nervous about it as far as this was a really big deal. I think it was the first time we had somebody come like that in many, many years. But anyway, so I was getting ready to leave my office to go to, I think it was the Kalahari, I'm guessing. And I was seeing my very last patient of the evening, and he was running a little late. And I'm like, of course, and he came in and he's like, yeah, you look like you're in a hurry. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just nervous. I've got to, you know, this really sucks. I've got to do this big speech tomorrow in front of 300, 400 chiropractors. And I hate it. Because, it's like you're in the room with all these chiropractors. Sometimes some of us are mean and we're awful. And it's your peers and you're never good enough, right, Chris? Right?
Oh,
And
exactly.
so and it's like, it's crazy. I mean, put me in a room, let me teach you something or share knowledge, and I can talk to 10 people, I can talk to 300, 600. But have me give you an opinion, and even now I got cold sweats just thinking about it. And he said, wait a minute, you're going to be with like 300, 400 chiropractors? I said, yeah. He's like, oh my God. And I'm like, right? That's awful. He said, what do you mean that's awful? Oh my God, I think I died and went to heaven if I was there. It was like, what? He's like, 300, 400 chiropractors in one room? Oh my God, you guys are all angels. How can I come with you? And I was
Wow.
like, and it totally, totally just knocked me on my butt because I never thought of it like that. What I was thinking was horrible, to be with all you guys, no offense. He gave me a whole new perspective. And he said, it was one of those things. You guys give me life. I don't know what I would do without you. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So anyway, fast forward, when I had to introduce Scott Walker, I went off script and I told that story. And I got in big trouble, by the way, as you can well imagine. But it didn't matter because it was a very defining moment as far as me feeling good about chiropractic and about my colleagues and all of us together. And I've had a whole new perspective on being with like-minded people and enjoying that no matter where we're at. And so it was cool. And and every time I see him, I oftentimes thank him for that.
Wow. You did the right thing. I've got the goosebumps just listening to your story about that. So obviously you were dealing with self-esteem earlier in your career and kind of learned through the school of hard knocks and through experience. And it was kind of patient affirmation that brought you into business confidence and with patient care confidence.
Yes. And, I think like many of us, we oftentimes need that slap in the face a few times before we actually listen. There was 2 more times that I think made a difference. And I'm going to share these just because I think all of us probably, if we ask these questions, but we'd be able to have the same experience. I don't know about you, but oftentimes patients come in, they're like, oh my gosh, doc, I need a miracle, whatever, they've got huge radicular pain, they've got a migraine, whatever. And they'll say, I need a miracle. And I always joke, well, I'm allowed 1 miracle a day. Let's see if you're it. And again, one time somebody said, you're only allowed 1 a day. And she started laughing. I'm like, well, yeah, probably. Because you're always thinking about those big cases. And she would always come in just a routine patient, air quotes around that. And she said, well, I must be that one patient every day then. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Because, you're no big deal. You're just a routine adjustment. And she said, I can't tell you the number of times you've adjusted me and you've taken away my headache. And I did not yell at my kids. I was able to make dinner. I didn't get mad at my husband that night. I was able to finish my work. So you must give me the miracle every single time. And it just really took me back thinking, wow, what I think of as a normal routine adjustment to her that day, how many times was that miracle? And so that kind of made me think. And it kind of made me think too about, well, how is it when you get adjusted? When I got a migraine or when I get a headache, it's like, oh, give me an adjustment right now. Now, granted, I have a husband who I have to beg, no, just kidding, to get adjusted, right? But look at how we react to it. It is a miracle. And then we think of our routine everyday maintenance patients, but you know what? We are giving those miracles every single day. And then another time I was having dinner with a couple of pain docs and orthopedic, and the subject came up about just problem patients, and we were enjoying a wonderful bottle of wine at the time, but then they said, oh my gosh, you guys have it made. We are so jealous of what people think of you. And this was the orthopedic talking to me. And we're like, what are you talking about? Aren't you an orthopedic doc? Aren't you like the God? And he starts laughing. He goes, no, because if I don't give them a medication, what am I supposed to do for them? If they're not surgical, I send them to PT, or I give them a med or whatever. Whereas patients come into you, they always love their chiropractor. They always love you guys. And I was like, wow, coming from you, coming from that medical side, it was kind of wild. I never, ever expected them to be jealous of us. Right.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. I enjoyed that.
It is a pretty cool career how we can make such an impact so quickly with the chiropractic adjustment. And I was, I've been in practice for 33 years. I got adjusted right before I left the office. And again, 33 years later, I'm still appreciating what chiropractic can do for me. So you would think that feeling would happen, but it does. Hello, everyone. I want to tell you a little bit about our upcoming 2024 Wisconsin Chiropractic Association Spring Convention. It's going to be held April 11th through the 14th at the stunning Ostaf Resort in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out in practice, the Spring Convention is the place to be. Join us for a unique opportunity to earn CE credits while enjoying the beautiful surroundings of Elkhart Lake. We'll have informative sessions led by industry experts. The vendor area will provide an opportunity for you to explore a variety of products and services from leading companies. And as you know, the in-person experience of our WCA conventions always provides the opportunity to connect with colleagues from across the state. So mark your calendars for April 11th through the 14th, 2024, and join us at the WCA Spring Convention at the Ostaf Resort in Elkhart Lake. Registration will be open mid-January of 2024, so again, just a heads up, save the date, April 11th through the 14th. We can't wait. We'll see you there. So There's so much for us to cover. I want to talk about, like in your introduction, your time with the WCA, the teaching that you've done and continue to do. But back to your time in practice, before we leave that topic, tell me a little bit about the techniques that you use, and then let's get a little bit into your clinical toolbox. Let's talk chiropractic technique first.
Well, please don't make me name them. because I'm sure you also have your Chris Resch style. I guess I was primarily trained with Diversified. I learned Thompson along the way. I learned Activator along the way. And I learned the, I really can't say what I call it, the Varish technique along the way, as well as many others. I will tell you, and the one thing I want to, really emphasize to young docs at any time is if I can tell you one thing about what adjustment to use or how to treat a patient, my number one thing, the best skill that you can learn is to listen to the patient. I don't care if they are this big, giant, 300-pound man, a 96-year-old osteoporotic female, infant, or a teenager or whatever. If they want a harder adjustment, a softer adjustment, do they want Activator? Do they want Diversified? Do they want side posture or don't they? Don't think that you know it all. If you listen to what they respond to and how when their body relaxes, even if it's a technique that you're not super comfortable with, remember, you're in practice. Listen to their body, listen to how they react, and adjust your adjustments. Don't ever get stuck on one adjustment and think that that's going to do it for everybody. Just listen to your patients. And when I started doing that, I can't tell, you asked me what technique I use. And I'm like, well, for what? And it can vary. It can vary from patient to patient, even day to day with that certain patient. It's what works best for them.
Gotcha. Let's talk about other things. I mean, it starts with the adjustment. That's why we're chiropractors.
Mm-hmm.
But what other clinical tools is happening at Varish Chiropractic?
Okay, so as you may know, I mean, I teach all the physiological therapeutics. I teach rehab. I do a lot with light therapy and laser, but always it comes back to the adjustment. I actually had somebody, I was teaching out of state, and they said, "Oh, you must use therapy on every patient." And I'm like, no, I don't. In fact, we actually did a study in our office, and we really only use it on maybe a third of our patients. It's those that need it. So I would say number one is the adjustment. However, I will use different modalities as indicated if it's going to enhance what I do. I absolutely love light therapy. I have everything from like a home type of unit that I can send with them, which is similar to a class 2-ish laser. I've got a class 3 equivalent with LEDs, and I've got a class 4 laser. So I will tell you that when you listen to me and when I talk about light, I talk about light. I don't talk about laser or this or that, because light is the actual therapy. And just like an automobile is your mode of transportation, there's different types of automobiles. There's the Corvette up to the dump truck, to the moped, to everything else. And that's how I look at light therapy modalities. And so I'm really fortunate. I really stress if you as docs can have the more tools you have in your toolbox, you will find that you use them when appropriate. And it makes a ton of difference with patients on whether we use the class 4 or whether I recommend even the one that goes home. I also, when I first started in practice, I did a lot of rehab, but again, gave it away, or patients didn't see the value of it, or you're in the same room and you're, when we look at these rehab codes, it's a minimum of 8 minutes, right? 8 to 15 minutes. And you're doing it. And I would notice, patients did not realize, they thought it was part of the adjustment. And so did I give a lot away again. But yet they'd go to a PT and they'd pay it there. I've gone to a lot of rehab seminars. One of the challenges I see is I do not have 20, 30 minutes to spend on rehab or longer than that. And a lot of the techniques out there, that's what they were. And they were very time consuming and a lot of effort. Oh my gosh, physically. And as you know, Chris, I think I'm doing great, but at the same point, your body starts to get tired and you find you want to work smarter, not harder, and yet still do everything you used to do. So I do rehab techniques now much more than I used to, but the last, 2-3 years, I've been using a device that helps me. I get, oh my gosh, it's awesome. And my maintenance patients love it. One patient said it's like doing an hour's worth of Pilates, yoga, and PT within 10 to 15 minutes. They get more out of it and it lasts longer. And so I can test them up before and after. I adjust them. I do the rehab max of 20 minutes total for all of that. They pay it, even if it's cash, which is really cool. Then you know it works and it saves my body. So I've been using a device that basically a whole nother person. It's allowed me, to get back to that rehab that I kind of stopped doing because, okay, you just went to the adjustment because it was faster, it was easier and everything else. But then you're realizing you're missing some things. And so it was actually during COVID, I started working with my maintenance patients, the patients that were coming in because we had the time, started doing this with them, and they absolutely loved it. So I started doing a program where I do it once a week for 3 weeks, and then I'd retest them in a month, 2 months, 3 months, or whatever. And they ask now, hey, can I get back on the ProTech, because it allows them to kind of regain some of that flexibility. But the flexibility that they were improving within 10 minutes lasts months. And you don't get that with a regular PT appointment or rehab. So that's been a lot of fun to add in with the adjustment.
So I'm hearing adjustment, I'm hearing light, and I'm hearing ProTech spine.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. So you mentioned teaching, and you have quite a teaching background with the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association, whether it's teaching CTs, CRTs, so teaching the therapeutic modalities, teaching appropriate techniques on taking X-ray, and then you have plenty of doctor courses too that you've developed and you continue to teach. What inspired you to teach?
That is a fascinating question. Probably a few things. I think somewhere in my, let's say, genetics, I have 4 younger sisters, and 3 of them are teachers, which is interesting, right? So there's probably some of that just from there. But as far as teaching docs, one of the things I absolutely hate is going to a seminar and either the techniques are so time consuming or they're just for a very small part of the population, they're not for general. I always liked where I could come back, I was excited, and I could use something tomorrow in my office. I may not be able to use it all, but if I can learn one thing that I can start using tomorrow on some of my patients, that was always a good seminar. So one of the things that I hope that I strive for in any of the teaching that I do is that, number one, I know this sounds crazy, but I started to teach so that I could learn more. Because when you teach, you have to be on top of it. You have to learn. And you guys don't realize this, but when I'm teaching, I always gain knowledge and new insights and new techniques and just different ways of thinking and looking at things from the people who are participating. And I always love it. I always say I have to learn at least one thing every time I teach as well, because then they take, you guys, teach me as well. I just happen to be the person up there who's presenting it, who took the time to write it down and put it into PowerPoint or whatever. But when that's the one thing I love, especially about, when we all get together and we're learning from each other, is not one person has all of the answers. And when you're in those group situations, don't you love when somebody else, oh, let me show you this. Oh, let me show you that. Oh, I had a patient that, this or that or whatever. So I guess, honestly, it was probably very selfish on my part to begin with, because I wanted to learn more. And it allowed me to be able to learn from those that I was teaching as well. And so I love it. I love it. I was just in Alabama not too long ago, and I was kind of curious on how that was going to go, because it's a totally different, what is their culture down there? And it was so fun. It was great. I did a nutrition seminar, and then I also did a rehab seminar, and we had a great time. It was just a lot of fun. So chiropractors around the U.S. I've been in California, I've been in Tennessee, Michigan, all different states, and it is just it's great to see people who are, again, like-minded, using their hands, knowing what the body can do for itself, and knowing that you can help that and be part of that.
It's interesting that you recognize that, how much you learn by teaching. And obviously, we have other guests on this program, and a mentor of yours, and of course, a mentor of mine, said the same thing, and that would be Dr. Steve Yeomans.
Oh, absolutely. I would 100% put Dr. Steve Yeomans. I'd put Jeff Wilder as far as teaching, mentorship, as their knowledge. Oh my gosh, don't you just look at them and you just want to bow down and say, teach me, teach me. They are, I don't know where they get all their knowledge. It is so fun to be around somebody like that. And I just love to be around those people where I can just okay, just let me osmosis. Can I just stand next to you and, learn it? But they're both just amazing advocates for our profession. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Any other individuals out there that inspired you, whether it's in chiropractic or in life, just to make you who you are?
When I was little growing up, my childhood heroine was Amelia Earhart. And I don't know why. I think it was just her sense of adventure, her sense of saying, I can do this, even when people say I can't. I always felt that you had to always keep trying, always keep, looking. I don't want to just say looking to the sky, but in many ways that is, because, look to God, look for what those talents are that you have been given, and continue to cultivate them. The day that I think I know it all, something's wrong with me, because I think, like I said, we are in practice every single day, and we should be learning, whether it's from our staff, whether it's from our patients, whether, if you don't think you learned something, I don't know about you, but every morning I'll look through my emails, half of them are junk, but then I'll go, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Whether it's Medscape that comes through or some of the chiropractic ones that come through, and some of them I'll, gloss over, but you always have to keep learning, always keep learning.
Teacher keeps learning, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, as far as the teacher, 100%, 100%. I think, yes, you don't know what you don't know.
Let's segue into leadership positions. So you were the chiropractor of the year given by the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association just a couple of years ago. And I had the honor of introducing you, and I got a hold of your CV and your bio and realized how many different leadership positions you've been in, whether it's locally in your community or within the state in your own profession at the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association. And in your introduction, I mentioned that you were the president of the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about your time and what inspired you to become a leader in the profession and becoming a board member and eventually being selected and elected by your peers to be the president of the state association.
Well, the funny story about how I ended up on the board, I wasn't there when they elected me. I don't know if you knew that. If you recall, we used to have district meetings all the time. I started to get involved, and I was involved, well, even as a student, I was involved in SACA, student ACA a lot. I don't know. I tend to be involved. And then if somebody needs something done, I would always say, sure, I can do that. Hey, no problem. I can do that. And then I think I was asked, hey, are you interested in being on the board? Oh, sure, no problem. I don't know what that involves. Why not? And it just so happened the night that I was elected, I had to go to a funeral, my father-in-law's funeral, actually. So I was gone, and they're like, oh, by the way, you're on the board. I'm like, oh, okay. Not realizing what an impact that would make on my personal and professional life. So being on the board, I learned so much. I learned how to look at something from a big picture. I looked at how to put on my 10-year hat, how to realize that it's not about me. when you're in a leadership position, the word me should not come into into your vocabulary, into your thinking whatsoever. Because when you're in a leadership position, you have to look 10 years down the line. This decision that I make today, what impact is it going to have later? Because then no matter what, you or me, I can adjust, right? I'm a chiropractor. I can adjust to whatever it is, as long as I know that that decision is going to benefit the profession on a long-term basis. So being on the board was pivotal in learning that, in actually really respecting chiropractic, respecting our peers, respecting that long-term vision for what we still want to be, and where we can go in the future. So being involved is just kind of how it happened and how things kind of came about with that. Also, being on the board was interesting in the sense that, and I'm sure you know this, from when you get somebody who's elected to the board because they want to, they're angry about something, they just want to change the world or whatever. That's not a bad reason to get elected whatsoever, or to run. In fact, it's not bad at all. But I really wish that people would understand, when you get on a board, whether it's in your village or town or the state association, I encourage everybody to, consider that. But you need to go and you need to look at everything and start learning from a big picture. Look at the historical background. Was that question, or was that posed in the past? And if so, if it went through or it didn't go through, was that why? Because that still may be valid to this day, or times change. Maybe it's time to ask that question again. Maybe it's time to, go in that different direction. But keep in mind that when you look at something from both a historical as well as both perspectives, historical as well as the future, really need to put the two together in order to make those decisions, because you're making those, for the greater good. And I think that was one of the big things I learned with being on the board, was that it's not about me whatsoever. It made me a better leader from a office standpoint. Although at the time, we put so much time into stuff. I think I was constantly late in my own office at the time. I know I would be doing things differently today, just because you learn stuff, priorities and how to manage that a little bit better. But I encourage people, if you want to make a difference, don't automatically assume, oh, I'm going to make a difference on this one. If you have a platform you want to run on, that's fine. But don't think that even if you don't have one major, gripe, you can make a difference. You just have to, look at the big picture. And what do you want to advocate for? Is it one little thing, or do you want to advocate for the profession and for patients and for when I say family, I mean your chiropractic family from now and into the future?
Okay, you're one of the most humble people that I know. And I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone a little bit here. When it comes to the board, if I had to say proudest moment, and maybe that's not the best way to say it, but if I had to say, if you had to mention something, I'm really happy we got that done. Do you have a moment?
Oof. Wow, there was a lot of stuff we did. Two things stick out in my mind. One was maintaining insurance equality when we had, and I'm sure a lot of the young docs don't have any idea about this, but when we had all of those people at the Capitol, I think, Chris, we were the very first group ever to make a big stand at the Capitol. We had people come in, everyone, it was just crazy, to see the crowd out there saying, we want insurance equality for chiropractic. That was a very humbling experience, because, from a business standpoint, oh, we want chiropractic, we want our money, right? But when we have patients taking off of work, coming down on their own, riding buses, all of that, that tells me that we're making a difference. And it's not about the money. It's not just about the money. It's about healthcare, and it's about the right to choose your healthcare, and did not always have to go that medication route. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for that. always a place for that. But I think people have the right to not have to go down that road if they don't want to. That was pretty exciting. The other big moment that I can think of off the cuff was nutrition. Current docs don't realize, but it was illegal for us to recommend vitamin C for a cold. It was illegal for us to recommend glucosamine sulfate for arthritis. It was illegal to recommend any supplement whatsoever if it wasn't for general health purposes only. And we were walking a really fine line. And then by getting the nutrition bill passed, yes, we have to have, we had to have our 48 hours, which we already had tons of that in school, but we had to have a little bit more. And we had to, now we have to have 4 hours every biennium. Big deal. I mean, if you think that's a lot, again, you don't know what you don't know. And there's so much to learn with that. But getting that passed was huge. I don't even know if I want to say this, but I don't think people realize that we got that passed. We are now able to recommend supplements or a nutritional regimen or protocol, however you want to say it, for specific conditions. And the cool part about it is we can ensure that those patients get quality products even in our office. And that's different from, say, a medication. Medical doctors cannot sell their medication in their office because of kickbacks. I hope and believe that as long as we continue to recommend nutritional supplements with integrity and based upon the correct conditions and with the education that we're getting, that we can continue to also offer those super high quality products that we have access to. You can't necessarily get at some of these big box stores. I think it makes a huge difference because we all know that the quality of the product is important. And we have some amazing vendors, and getting to know them and their products and then being able to match our patients with those. Wow, that's pretty powerful. And that's another tool in our toolbox. And that, as far as being on the board, getting that passed, that took a lot of work. But hey, we got it. And to this day, I think it benefits people, patients, as well as us, right? As well as us as doctors.
I think it would be accurate to say if it wasn't for all that work, many chiropractors wouldn't be practicing functional medicine today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, functional medicine, by the way, that's one thing I refer out for, because those docs that do functional medicine, you guys are awesome in what you do. You could send me all the cervical discs, all the peds. I love all those. But yeah, functional medicine it's a whole nother animal. And that's a lot of education that goes with that.
Why should a chiropractor be a member of the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association, and how important is ChiroStrong?
Oh, Chris, we should have started with this. This could have taken up the entire hour. First of all, I don't care if you've been in practice for a month, if you've been in practice for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I believe with all my heart that you should be a member of the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association. Having been behind the scenes, people don't realize how much work the WCA puts into keeping our profession what it is today. Everybody on that board puts on their 10-year hat. Again, there is no me. They are saying, what do we need to do to keep our doctors at the highest level in healthcare? In healthcare. I mean, healthcare nowadays, I think we can all agree, has become very sick care, especially insurance, right? As chiropractors, we need to keep on top of things all the time. You talk about ChiroStrong. Back when I was on the board, it was called CHIEF, Chiropractic Health Information and Education Fund. And we had to call, as board members, we had to call all of our constituents within our districts and ask them to contribute to CHIEF, which is now ChiroStrong. In some ways, I wish they still did that. I don't know if they still do. I don't think so. But first of all, Chris, I hate politics. I hate politics. And I think, again, it's kind of one of those things as doctors, we don't want to deal with that. But again, being on the board, I realized that the WCA does so much, again, behind the scenes to keep our license where it is, to increase things, to keep us, again, at the forefront of healthcare. And unfortunately, politics are involved. There are people, they get elected to the legislature, sometimes with experience, sometimes with not, many with agendas. And if we are not part of their agenda and we don't bring chiropractic to their attention, then the other side is going to. And when I say the other side, those are the people, those are whether the insurance company doesn't want to pay, they don't want to increase access to chiropractic. Whatever the case is, if we don't stay on the forefront of these politicians' minds, then the other side will. And as much as I dislike politics, I absolutely love the concept of what was Chief and now ChiroStrong, because what it does is it allows the WCA to rate the politicians on how friendly are they to chiropractic? How are they going to help us with this bill? How are they going to hurt us? And that way I don't have to pay attention to it. So I can maintain that. And yet still, I know that there's a watchdog out there. You know, the WCA is watching and they are helping tell me who I should support. And financially, being on the board, I know how important that is. And a little goes a long way. And what's really cool, I don't know if, you know, those of you who donate to ChiroStrong or not, or when you sign those, yes, I approve this money going, but I get politicians that will write me handwritten thank you notes. My son ended up, he had his Eagle Scout ceremony just a couple of years ago, which was really exciting. And of course, we contacted our politicians and they oftentimes will come to those ceremonies. But each and every one that came up to me personally and thanked me for being a chiropractor and supporting them as well. And I was like, holy cow, I didn't even know that they knew who I was. But it was through ChiroStrong, and they realize it, they get it too. And so it is so important. You may think that you can't afford $20 a month, or you can't afford, $50 a month. Take, one patient visit, if that's all it is a month, and you need to donate to that. You need to support. I don't want to say necessarily donate. You need to support your own profession, because if you don't take care of yourself, who's going to? Do you really want to be on welfare for chiropractic? You need to be part of the solution, and being part of the WCA, going to the seminars, supporting the seminars. We have other groups out there. Many, many times I've had groups say, hey, do you want to come teach for us? But I always look at, wait a minute, where does your money go? Oh, well, you'll make all this money and you can do this and that. Believe me, Chris, I said I was a bad business person. Okay. I could make a lot more money elsewhere, but that's not the point. I want to support an organization that is supporting me, supporting my profession in the long run. The money that the WCA makes on seminars, the money that goes into ChiroStrong, all of it goes back to the profession. And you can't say that about some of these other groups. Who makes it? Not the chiropractic profession. You don't see them donating. You don't see them supporting you as a state, you as anything else. So that is very near and dear to my heart. Don't ask me why. I think it's maybe from being on the board so long, maybe knowing that all the unseen hours that go into everything, so that you don't have to worry, so that, the general chiropractor is just doing their own thing and not having to worry about what's going on. So I think the very least people can do is be part of the solution, be a member of the WCA, be a full dues paying members, pay your dues, support ChiroStrong, and then you don't have to do the work. You don't have to think about it. You just have to be there. And I think if you want a good profession, if you want to advocate for the profession, there's no better way to do it than that.
Yeah, those are all great points about the WCA, and we could talk about that for a long time. I know we could. So as we come to a close here, let's hear a little bit about what you like to do outside of chiropractic.
First of all, it's funny because for so many years, I did not do a whole lot outside of chiropractic, just because that is your life, especially when you're a business owner, you're married to a chiropractor, you're teaching on the weekends. However, I love getting out in the community. I do a lot of different things there. I have a passion for horses. Recently, I was been pretty fortunate the last few years. I actually reached goals I never realized I even had. So I have been able to pull those poor horses on the trailer, many, many states, many, many miles, been to several world shows, and have, just got so lucky. So I've got my two horses left at home, and they're my babies. I see them every morning and night, and they are very spoiled and everything else. Kids are now just out of the house, just barely. So that gives me a little more time. I love being outside. We've got a great dog. Love doing things like that. So it's just, I guess, being outside. I love being outside. I love travel. Oh my gosh. You give me a place to travel, and I love traveling. And that's the one place on a plane I will allow myself to read a novel that is not chiropractic related. So I love traveling and sharing that. And then just being with people who just bring up your energy, just are fun to be with, enjoy life, enjoy seeing things from a positive standpoint. We've got so much negative in the world. It's so freeing to be able to say, hey, gosh, things are just amazing. I'm actually doing a 40-day grateful challenge with two people right now. So every morning we text each other what we are grateful for. I'm on day 20, different things. And basically so you take something negative and turn it into a positive. So the other morning, when of course it was like freezing out, I said, I am grateful for warm gloves and a warm barn so that I can warm up after I've frozen walking out there and in the rain. So, just little things like that. But it has been just a game changer, being able to be in those environments with people all over the country, enjoying things, and with the horses, being able to do stuff with people. I mean, that's a true partnership, because when you're working with a horse, you've got a 1,200-pound animal with you who could step on you if they wanted to, and they have. But you have to be able to put down any ego you think you have, and work in conjunction with them. And that's been an enlightening experience. So it's been fun.
All right, tell the listeners, who drives the truck with the trailer, you or George?
100% me. And he will tell you that too. So, and
That's great.
backing, I can back a 40-foot trailer like nobody else. So I don't want to, but I can.
I've heard you teach other people how to back up a trailer. So,
oh yes, I had a semi truck trailer patient who taught me a couple of great tricks. And so again, the more I can teach how to back up a trailer, the little things, I mean, gives you all the confidence in the world. So I am more than willing to always share those. So anybody who wants to learn those tricks, you just let me know. I'll teach you a couple of great tricks.
Okay, Wendy, you're a teacher, you're a leader in your profession, you're a business owner, you're a healthcare provider. Do you have a personal motto, or do you have any inspiring words for our listeners before we wrap this up?
Ooh. Well, when we first bought the businesses, my goal was to make a life for my staff and to make a life for others. That phrase, build it and they will come. I think I've always adopted that. I am horrible when it comes to statistics, and yet I'm doing fine. So obviously somewhere along the line that worked out. You've heard me say multiple times today, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's one thing I would always, I don't care what aspect of life, whether it's something with a patient, whether it's something in your own life, whether it's, you see somebody who's crabby, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. And just always be open to that, and always be, I guess, if I had one thing to say, and I think I said it already, but listen to what the others have to say, even if they're not saying it verbally. And I think that's one of the things with the horses. You have to listen. You have to listen to their body, listen to their energy. And if you listen and you become a partner with that, life is fun. Practice is fun. Everything else is joyful as long as you're not trying to fight that. If they're in a bad mood, listen to it. Don't bring yourself down there, but bring them up from there. So I guess, that's one thing I would say is always listen, always be open, always be willing to open yourself up to what else can bring you joy. And sometimes, gosh, it is the little things.
Dr. Wendy Varish, on behalf of the WCA and all of our listeners, I want to thank you for everything you do for chiropractic, and thank you for this time. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's been wonderful. Thanks.